So we just want to be in like CNN, Economist, Wall Street Journal, TechCrunch, BBC.
I'm sorry, you can't.
Do you have a sort of naughty list, a red flag list of repeat offenders?
If you're a PR firm and you're making the same mistakes, then I will judge you.
Who keeps you awake most at night? Who stresses you out most? PR people, founders, or investors? Okay.
This is the Wimbart Way.
Tage, thank you so much for coming and speaking to me on the Wimbart Way podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you, Jessica, and I'm glad to be here.
Jessica, government name. But it's interesting because you are not usually the interviewee, you're the interviewer.
Yeah, so this is tricky.
Top tips, or I'm going to need an analysis afterwards.
Fair enough, yeah.
But thank you so much, because you are, I guess, a gateway for a lot of African companies. I won't just say startups, but, you know, scale-ups, unicorns as well. You are a gateway between them and the rest of the world with your role as the Africa reporter for TechCrunch. It's a role that you've held for some time, but it'd be really interesting to hear about your story in journalism to date, where you started out and how you got your big break at TechCrunch as well.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jess. And yeah, so I've been with TechCrunch for about 5 years now, which is a long time. Before that, I was working at TechCrunch Africa, which is also a tech publication based in Lagos. And so I worked my way up from being a startup intern to being like the West African reporter on startups and venture. So that was between 2019, mid-2019, up until 2020. So I joined TechCrunch in January 2021. Those are like the two official roles I've, held in my career. As a tech journalist or just working in tech in general. So back in college, I used to be very interested in the tech scene, reading any stuff I could find on TechCrunch, on TechAbout, on TechPoint. Those were the three biggest for me at the time. And this was in 2017, 18. I saw myself being maybe a founder or a VC, whatever, within the ecosystem. I think TechPoint had this boot camp. It was the first of its kind where they requested for people to join and learn how to write. I mean, I knew how to write, but it wasn't like tech reporting or journalism.
How do you refine your craft?
So before then, I had a Medium post where I just kind of talked about stuff I was interested in building, right? And so joining the program or the bootcamp with TechPoint was more of them teaching me how to translate whatever thoughts I had about tech into writing. And at the time there was Victor Equalo, who was part of the team, that was TT, that was Inca, and so these were the editors at the time who trained we upcoming reporters on how to write. And compared to my peers, I think for me, kind of what worked was that I knew a lot about the tech ecosystem. All I just needed to know was get into writing. However, for them, they needed to get in the mix, and know, read up about the ecosystem. So it's having that recall factor, okay, if you're writing about this startup, right, what they've done in the past. Those are nuances you need to be a journalist. You have to be able to recall things, you have to reach out to contacts, right? And that's kind of how I refine my skills right at TechPoint. And over time, 18 months with them, I was able to build some network, which I leveraged for TechCrunch. I mean, it's not like the networks helped me get into TechCrunch, but it was it was part of the craft I honed and, made the transition into TechCrunch kind of seamless.
And how much did your phone blow up as soon as you became TechCrunch writer?
Yeah, I think that was a defining moment of my career, obviously. I remember in October 2020, right, when Paystack got acquired by Stripe. So I was the first to report that in Nigeria after my future boss, who was was at TechCrunch, reported hers. But I didn't see her story. It was more okay, we're in the editorial room and Wale, who was the boss, and we got wind of the acquisition. I was oh, let's get this out before TechCrunch does. But I mean, TechCrunch had the exclusive, right? And so yeah, TechCrunch got the story out maybe, let's say 1 o'clock. I got mine by 1:30. I kind of had the same, traffic on Twitter, right? So that was the first time where I felt I had impactful coverage, right? And I think from there, people started kind of noticing my work and saying, oh, you got this almost as early as TechCrunch, right? And 3 months later, I joined TechCrunch. And I think when I reached out to them to kind of, ask if they were ever hire in Africa, I think Jake was the reporter at the time. He was leaving, and me sending them my work and seeing the Paystack story was one of the things that kind of made me the perfect candidate for them. And to your question about like my phone blowing up, yeah. So when I made the announcement, it was like, oh, congratulations, blah blah blah. And even from like people I hadn't some of the people hadn't spoken with as a reporter for TechPoint. So like some of the founders and like investors that I looked up to, it was one of those moments like I still hold there, right? And seeing like how I kind of transitioned from just like, okay, being this intern reporter 18 months ago to reporting for one of the biggest, tech publications like on the planet.
Thanks very much, Tage. So it's super interesting to hear your journey into journalism, how you refine your craft, and then landing the role at TechCrunch. I think Wimbart actually did that Haystack Stripe acquisition story. So our story.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And we worked with you whilst you were at TechPoint as well.
Definitely. I think I remember the ETOP story.
Yes.
Check. Yeah. So that was my last story before I left TechPoint to join, I think, TechCrunch. Yeah, I got the story from you guys, I guess.
So interestingly, are there any stories that you are kind of upset that you've missed out on over the years?
Missed out. So yeah, I think more recently would be the Lemfi acquisition of the UK credit card, credit led fintech Pillar. And for me, it was more so because like I covered Lemfi's Series B, and I think covering the acquisition story of a UK startup at the time, I think it was months back. That's like one of the biggest stories I missed was it was important to kind of highlight the next evolution of Nigerian companies who are like going global and like, buying out, foreign companies. And I think Pillar had raised about 16 million in series in pre-seed, which was huge, right? So but that kind of being acquired by, a Nigerian like company, and more broadly telling you that, okay, Lemfi is poised to do like, bigger things, right? And not me covering that was, I'll say it's one of the like, stories I regret like missing out on. And maybe why I missed out on was just a change in editorial policy within like TechCrunch to kind of go for more really like US stories versus like African to the world kind of stories.
So obviously sequencing is an issue as well in terms of lining stories up. It's really interesting to hear about your journey into journalism and reporting on the African tech space. But I think whilst we have you here, it would be good to hear about some of the technicalities of PR journalism and how we, the ecosystem, get a story from a deal happening onto the pages of TechCrunch or any other news platform. But let's use TechCrunch as an example.
Okay.
My understanding, although I speak to a lot of founders or communications people who they think that once the press release is ready, I hit send, I say, Tage, here's a story, and it goes up on TechCrunch 20 minutes later. That is not the case.
That's not the case at all.
Please, can you walk the listeners through the technical aspects and also the timeline? Because even sometimes when I say to a client or a comms person, it could be 2 weeks. They're looking at me as if I'm mad. But actually, I think sometimes 2 weeks, especially if you have other stories lined up, is still quite fast turnaround.
I agree. Yeah, to your points, right? When you say the press release with TechCrunch, like we don't just like copy and paste that on the platform, right? We have to interview the founders. We have to fact check some of the information on the press release. We have essentially like what we eventually write will be different from what's in the press release. The press release is just to be a guide, meant to be a guide to show the facts, right? And show the important details of the fundraise or like the announcement or whatever like the press release is about. All that you send and automatically you want TechCrunch like. And some PR people or like founders do this maybe the day before or 2 days. I'm like, what do you think I am? I'm sorry. Like,
Well, it's not just a you thing, it's all journalists, right? If you want to write a detailed in-depth story, takes
exactly
time.
It has, and I think also it boils down to do like founders or like PR people take time to look at the stories that are on this publication.
Exactly that.
Because if you do, you find out that it's different from what's on the press release you're sending, right? So automatically, like you have to know what like the reporter like you're pitching to, what they write about, what they're interested in, how they write.
You mentioned Jake, who was your predecessor for TechCrunch Africa previously, and we were working with a biking company.
Yeah.
Just started the early conversations. In fact, they hadn't even signed a contract with us, but we knew that Jake was coming to Lagos, and Jake really loves motorcycles.
Yeah, he does. Like,
So I said to the founder, why don't you offer to pick him up or take him for a ride? He'll be really interested. He'll be engaged. And I don't think Jake was able to do that at the time, but it piqued his interest.
there.
And it started off that relationship. So when the story was there, he was kind of interested as well. But it's being able to, I wouldn't pitch Jake or you like a fashion story, for example. Not saying you're not fashion.
Yeah, I hear you. But yeah, to your point, definitely, right? Because like, if over the years I've covered like fintech in Africa, right? And maybe you're an edtech startup. Obviously, I cover like other industries, but maybe you have to come with an angle where, you know what, maybe you're approaching this and it has some fintech element to it. Some startups are like that big where, you know, they can reach out to a founder maybe a reporter rather, couple hours before the announcement, and the reporter has no choice than to cover. But if you're like early stage and you need media, right, you have to give some time. You have to like space it 3 days, a week, 2 weeks, right, because of how much pitches or how many pitches they get.
And whilst we're on the technical aspects then of that relationship, sort of PR, pitching, journalism, what's a good angle?
Do you mean like with PR pitching?
Yeah, so you said that, you know, you touched on the fact that it had a good angle or a different angle. So what do you look out for in terms of a good angle?
Mostly fintech stories, decent raise over $1 million. You have you have a very, very good like, you know, user base. Then evolved to more, that was the Zip era from 2021 up until like 23. And more recently, it's been about like profitability, right? Or good revenue numbers, or having important investors on your cap table, right? So those are like what will I say I look out for being with TechCrunch, right? Different journalists look out for different things, but for TechCrunch, it's more about like the numbers and like you're telling a good story in terms of like, okay, your impact in Africa. Now where, you know, everyone's talking about AI, if you're building like an AI product, like how global relevant is it, right? Do you have important like, you know, talent on your team to help you drive this? It's like, okay, are you ex-Meta or are you ex, I don't know, OpenAI and all that kind of stuff, right?
I think what people don't realize is that you're not always the end decision maker as to whether or not a story gets over the line.
Okay. So that's the technical bit you're talking,
what happens behind the scenes to get a story onto TechCrunch.
All right. So you reach out like, well, first of all, I want to address this important notion that people reach out to find out how much you have to pay TechCrunch to get a release.
It's free, yeah.
Yes, I don't collect money, please, from anyone trying to pitch.
So, and that's because it's earned media.
Exactly, it's earned media, right? And like you only pay PR to help you get in touch with many journalists, right? And that's like the work of a PR firm. You don't come to the journalist and be like, oh, how much can I pay you to get this press release? Which is actually insulting, by the way. But like, yeah.
But this is why we're myth busting now.
Yeah, that's why we're myth busting. Fair enough. So this is why we need spacing, because first I have to take that pitch to my editors. We also move with the times and the seasons, right? So again, I'll also reference 2021, 22, right? There was a lot of fintech. Then 22, 23 was a lot of like crypto, right? So if, for instance, you're pitching AI at the time, I was going to like listen to you, right? In TechCrunch at least. Then I take that to my editor. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is what they do. This is why I think they're interesting, right? And they look at it and give a verdict, yes or no, why we think this is interesting, you should go ahead, or no, why we don't think it's interesting, and, you know, stay clear of. There are some cases where you can make like, you know, your second case why this should warrant coverage.
And is it a case of you having to, I don't want to say educating your editors because that sounds super patronizing, but kind of giving them the Africa context and focus?
Definitely, yeah. So there are instances, I mean, more recently rather, that I've had to like go back to say, you know what, this is an important story for like the region. So yeah, when you reach out and, you know, have that verdict, yes or no, then we'll let you know if, you know, we're proceeding. Then we'll have an interview, ask you certain questions, right, from your press release, and you address some questions, tough questions that we have for you, because ultimately, like, that's kind of why we go to the editor.
So you have to almost defend your own pitch, like someone's pitched to you and now you're pitching to the editor.
Exactly. And also you have to like draft questions where, okay, this is what we want to get from this pitch, from this story rather, right? So that's kind of why in the end, right, it looks different from the press release you sent, because we're coming back with questions we think you should address from what you've sent.
What's the percentage of approximately of yeses and nos from your editors?
I think up until maybe 2024, it used to be maybe 90-10.
Okay.
Yeah, 90 yes, maybe 10 no's. But yeah, within the past year, maybe it's been more, maybe like 60-70% no's, right? Because again, like the media landscape globally is changing towards like AI. Almost everything you like they want to hear about, especially in the US, has to revolve around AI. So like looking for instance, like, I'm being tasked to look for like the biggest, AI startups, right, in Africa and what they're doing. I mean, aside from InstaDeep and maybe some like smaller startups that have raised some money to tackle some problems, like in some sectors, right, there are little like stories you can get from that. So that's one of the reasons why like there's been like a, let's say, decrease in the kind of stories, let's say African stories you see on TechCrunch, right? Because we are not there yet, AI wise, and hopefully like that changes soon, right? If it does, then we'll probably start seeing more yeses.
Hopefully so. Fingers crossed. for all
Fingers
of us.
crossed, yeah.
So I guess sticking to the technical side of things, how do you maintain your journalistic integrity whilst being a kind of active part of the ecosystem and I guess not being pulled in too many directions by the tech bros?
Fair enough. I mean, that's why I like staying in my house. But yeah, I think it's important to have that relationship first between like, yourself and founders and investors, PR people, right? Because, nuance is important in the kind of stories you tell. And if, for instance, you're reporting on a particular company, right, you need to talk to, founders in the same sector, right, to understand, or investors, right, to get a balanced story. So they're important to have, like, it's important to have those relationships. So now when the story is about them, now that's when it becomes dicey. And I think it's up to the founders and investors you like you're close with as a journalist to respect that boundary, because ultimately it's like you're doing your job, right? When you have the story to tell, like you come to me and I tell it for you, right? It should be like the same when there's a bad story about you and I reach out to you to ask. Like there should be that mutual respect that I'm not going out to harm or hurt you. Founders, investors, like you don't have a hold on the media or like journalists if you're not paying them. So like I don't see any reason why you should express displeasure when a story which is right about you, all right, but because it's not painting you in a good light, then you start to like cuss out the journalists or like cuss out the media or cuss out PR, right? Because they're just doing their job. So I think, yeah, just like having that mutual respect for each other is important, and setting boundaries, right? If maybe you're being, as a journalist, told that, okay, yeah, I want to fly first class for this, blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you should know that something will give. So yeah, you should set boundaries, okay? Or if you're going for that trip, right, like, okay, I'm not obligated to do this. Like, are we good about that? You said, and the person's like, okay, fine, no problem. Then, you made your point clear.
That's an interesting thing, because we've been in that situation before where we've suggested journalists for trips, and then the client would be like, oh, but they have to write the story and have to that. And I said, but this is the wrong type of journalist to go after. I said, basically the onus is on you to make the event so interesting.
Exactly.
They feel compelled to write
about it. Yeah, definitely.
And they're not kind of forced to write something pulpy just because.
Exactly. And like it also boils down to the kind of publication you work for, right? Because even as a journalist, if you promise, like that's why I never promise like a story, even though I get like invited for like, events or like trips or whatever, because I didn't know that it's not my say.
Yeah.
Right. And like, you know what? Yes, I'd like to come for this, but ultimately, like, don't expect a story out of it. If you're fine with that, no problem, right? But if the events or like, there are speakers at the events that saves, interesting stuff, right? As a journalist, like, those are the kind of pitches you want to give.
No,
back
because
to
then you'll be a fool to miss out on the
exactly,
scoop, right?
Right. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. So you take those stories and, you make sure you're right about them, right? So I think for, founders, investors who are trying to like, buy the goodwill of journalists, you probably need to make, whatever you're pitching or like the events or whatever the trip, like compelling enough for them to find the story worth writing about.
Okay. So then who keeps you awake most at night? Who stresses you out most? PR people, founders, or investors?
It has to be founders. It has to be founders because like every other like day you have someone like pitching to you.
The boss.
Yeah, we have this, we have that. Even for very little things like, oh, we just launched this product. Can I get on TechCrunch? I'm sorry, you can't.
And it's really hard. And I was having a conversation with someone earlier as well. We're talking about we need founders and I guess investors as well, and maybe some PR people to actively consume the media that they're pitching.
Exactly, yeah.
Because we often have a new client call and it'll be someone maybe with not a huge amount of traction. They might not have raised any money. And then they'll be like, yeah, so we just want to be in like CNN, Economist, Wall Street Journal, TechCrunch, BBC. And it might be like two guys in a tiny room doing a fintech thing.
And
there's
no
nothing
shade.
visual.
I mean, no shade, yeah, but like you can't be on those publications.
At all. I mean, even the tech publications, what's the kind of so what to compel them to write about it as well? So I think it's relationship management, but people need to really understand, I think, what the outlet actually covers before they're pitching.
Check the website.
Yeah.
check the journalist profile, see what they've reported on, right? And tell your pitch to that or wait till you get to that point before you pitch. Yeah.
I'm also heartened by the fact you didn't say PR people are the most irritating. So that's good. That's a win for PRs today. No?
Well, yeah, I mean, how do I put it? Like, I think maybe after founders.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, maybe PR people.
Okay. And so
investors.
Not naming any names or certainly no Wimbarts, but like, what are some of the issues that maybe you have sometimes with PRs? Or I guess let's put a more positive spin on it. Like, what makes a good PR?
So for the same thing that makes like a good pitch from a founder, like compelling. So if a PR firm is reaching out to you, I think with founders, I can give you the benefit of the doubt that maybe you haven't done your homework. But if you're a PR firm and you're making the same mistakes that the founders like are making, the ones who haven't gone out of their way to check out these publications or like check out what the reporters like to write them, then I will judge you.
And do you have a sort of naughty list, a red flag list of repeat offenders, not just PRs, but founders, investors, PRs, people just spamming you?
I mean, so I think there are some who just like reach out to ask how much to get stock on.
Is that just naivety or they're just hustling?
Man, I don't know. I think it's both.
Okay.
Right. When you do repeatedly, then I think it's naivety.
Yeah.
But if it's just probably once, maybe you don't have the right information and I let you know. But if you do it and like I get another pitch where it's a similar thing, right? Because I know like I've had such pitches where, I mean, this PR firm keeps, or like this founder keeps asking how much it is to get. So it's like, where do you even get that information from?
But is that just symptomatic of the broader, more traditional media landscape on the continent where journalists, not always, but often do pay for play?
That could be a reason, right? But like if I haven't given you a reason for it to think that, or maybe I respond and say, we don't like take payments for this, then why do you have to repeat it a couple of months? A couple of months, a year later. It's like, didn't you see why I said the last time? I think PRs and founders also have to keep evolving with what these publications are looking out for, right? So case in point with TechCrunch, like the Lemfi story, right, will probably,
This Lemfi story is keeping you awake at night, Tage.
No, I mean, I'm just trying to like, it's an example, right?
No, it's good to it's real, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's timely, because like, I think that was an important story that should have been on TechCrunch, but wasn't, right? If it was a year ago, it would have, right? But now it's more like the what's it called, focus of the publication has changed from what used to be versus what it is now, right? And so it's like founders also need to work, or PR firms also need to work with that. If you find out that maybe TechCrunch is interested in this, blah, 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 there are other publications that will be interested in such opportunities of new age, like, media people like, Big Tech This Week. Abayomi, who does some Twitter stuff too. I don't know if he has.
Kondia are really.
Kondia too, right? Well. Yeah. So Benjamin Dada with Kondia, right? It's important like those new like type of media influencers are coming right? So you don't have to depend on legacy media to get some of the stories
I
out.
completely agree. And I think it's also a case of educating founders, operators to also put some respect on those outlets'
Exactly.
names as well.
Yeah.
And like, the world doesn't begin and end with TechCrunch,
Yeah.
which is obviously difficult to say to a TechCrunch writer.
No,
And
it's not.
difficult- but it's difficult because for me, like I'm still judged on how many kind of my clients will get on TechCrunch, and
yeah.
we were known for being able to collaborate with TechCrunch
Yeah.
over many years as well. So it is important, but I think it's also raising people's
expectations.
Yeah, expectations, because actually, if something goes on, some of the local outlets, you have a captive audience of people who want to celebrate, and
Definitely.
it's going to have its moment.
And it's audience that actually matters to what you're building.
Exactly that.
Right, because the TechCrunch audience is in the US, and I mean, unless you're trying to signal to investors, right, there is not much like you get from it.
Yeah.
Literally, like you have more African readers reading TechPoint, Tech About, India, right, or watching Big Tech This Week, or Abayomi's shows, right, than you find African readers in the US or in the UK reading TechCrunch, right? So ultimately, like when you're on TechCrunch, it's like more of, okay, you're signaling to investors or like talent, which is important, but ultimately it's like your customers, you have to meet them where they are, and it's not really on TechCrunch.
That's a really important point. And I think that there has previously been a sort of a snobbishness around local players, which is completely unfounded. And for me, even when speaking to new clients, that would be a red flag if they say they're not fussed about African products.
Africa, yeah.
But they have an African product and their target audience is African, but they only want to be in TechCrunch.
Yeah.
That to me means they're not really serious, not thinking long term about building relationship with media or even their target audiences as well.
I agree, definitely, because like when you're again building for Africa, I mean, unless your product is a global product that maybe 90% of your traffic is from the US, right? Then you actually need to talk to like local press. Like it should not be, how do I put it? You should be told that like it should be part of the strategy, right? I mean, yes, I think because of what happened in 2021 to up to 2023, where everybody could get on TechCrunch because it was the Zip era and there's like lots of news, even just like globally, right? Like in India, in Latin America, so it was like a free period where where you could get free press on TechCrunch. Like those days are gone.
Yeah.
Right. And since those we have to kind of re-strategize and look inwards. I mean, getting on local media still has the same effect, as it used to. I think it's even better now because there are more reporters on ground who know about like the industry, right? And I think that like it's more nuanced reporting.
I agree.
Right. Than maybe a couple of years back. So I think like local media has a part to play, right? And founders building for the market should definitely put them in the strategy.
Yeah. I'm just greedy. I want TechCrunch and TechBar and Condia and like all of those as well, because I think that we don't all just have a single source of media influence as well. So it's better to cover all bases. My last question, Tage, thank you so much as well for going through all that. The process and the technicalities is really helpful, hopefully, for a lot of our listeners. The one thing that I do want to ask, though, is you touched upon AI. We've talked a lot about the people. So PRs can be irritating, founders can be, investors. And so there's very much a human element, which is really important. But now the increase of AI pitches, like how are you going to be able to juggle the two? Like how do you navigate people in AI? And what does that even mean for your profession and your role as a writer?
What does it mean for my role? I mean, I think there's going to be like heavy disruption in media when it comes to AI, because I mean, when you think about the top use cases of what you can do with AI, right? Like writing is one of them. And as a job as a writer, like what do you bring to the table? Now, for up and coming writers, for the junior reporters, it's bad period for them because of what you can use AI to do. Now, for maybe a reporter who's been like a decade, right? You have those relationships that AI cannot take, because when you're reporting, you have to have some nuance, you have to have context, right? And when you're reaching out for comments or some backstory, like reaching out to investors or founders, that's not a job AI can do. From the PR side of things, there are many AI generated pitches,
Oh, yeah.
right? And it's kind of easy to spot, right?
Okay.
Not easy per se, but like you can
see.
it, right? But I do respect people who take those pitches and draft it to modify them, right? Because I mean, AI can write anything, but you have to modify it to the taste of the person you're writing to, right? With PR founders doing that, I mean, it's good to make your work easier, life easier, but at the same time, you have to check those pitches.
I think you have to be intentional about the personalization as well.
Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with generating stuff AI, but you have to be intentional about
you have to edit your own.
edit your stuff.
Okay, so our jobs are safe from the robots for a little while.
Yeah, for now.
Okay.
Yeah, for now till we hear more from OpenAI.
Tage, thank you so much for your time. You've been very generous with not just time, but also insights into your role, how people can engage with you, how people can not engage with you, and just a little bit of demystification of what happens in a publishing house as well. So thank you so much for joining me on the
Jess,
Wimbart Way.
for having me.
Thank you.
And I think I want to say one more thing. The founders, you're your own media now. So exactly. So I think do with that as you will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Top tip.
That's top tip.
That's your top tip.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you so much.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me. Bye.
It's been a fascinating journey speaking to some of the continent's most impressive, compelling storytellers, commentators, thought leaders. I cannot thank all of them enough for taking their time out from their busy lives to discuss comms, PR, communications for African tech. I hope you've enjoyed it too. Here's to the next season.